Yes, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, whether you're in Europe, whether you're in Asia, whether you're in Africa, or in sunny, not so sunny South London. Dave, over there in Ireland, how's the weather? How are you? How's things?
Yeah, it's pretty good. It feels like we're in Spain right now over here in Ireland. So maybe you want to get a week over here, Savva. But no, look, thanks very much for having me back. Really appreciate it. Thanks to the your viewers that were nice in the comments underneath, some good comments and that. So thank you very much, and really enjoyed the last one. So I'm here again. Let's go.
Mate, they loved you. The video flew last time. They hate my face, but they seem to like yours. So
No
I'm doing
way.
something wrong. Dave, look, as we said last week, we said we'll do this again this week. It's been about 10 days since we last spoke. Yesterday, my plan was to say to you, well, nothing's happening, nothing's moving. Then, as I messaged you last night, we've got to start on this, right? Dominic Solanke is the name now that's being thrown about. It started with Fabrizio Romano. Now, Ali Gold is coming out today saying, "Oh my God, this is the perfect Ange player. He's perfect for the Ange system, and Spurs admire him." Dave, before we go into the ins and outs and before I absolutely rip the shit out of Levy, what do you make about Dominic Solanke and these links?
To be honest with you, I find it very underwhelming considering we were linked with the likes of Ivan Toney or Gorkarez, who I really feel like actually solve a problem for Tottenham and can bring us further on the pitch. When it comes to Dominic Solanke, to be brutally honest with you, I think it's a massive gamble, a bit like Brennan Johnson. Look, one thing is clear, and I said this last week, Tottenham are in the homegrown market this summer. They have to bring in one or two players from that market because it's one of the only areas of the squad that's left to really sort of revamp. We're beyond the quota for foreign players. We still have to get rid of some foreign players to get that quota down. So that's why we're in the market for English players, which probably actually rules out a Gorkarez altogether. So you're probably looking at Tony or Solanke. Now, this can be looked at two ways. Either we've gone for Ivan Toney and we don't want to pay the money and we've completely failed, and now we're trying to pivot to someone like Dominic Solanke, who for me would have been lower down on the list. But again, for such a huge fee, you're talking 60, 65 million. You know, look what we got out of Brennan Johnson for the massive fee that we paid for him. I just feel like we're maybe entering the same mistake again. I think it's a huge gamble taking in Dominic Solanke. Okay, he scored 19 goals in the Premier League last season and 21 in total, but he scored 7 the season before that. You know, now look, don't get me wrong, he's had a couple of good seasons in the Championship and stuff, but when I look at him, I don't think he's any more prolific than someone like Richarlison, to be brutally honest with you, with the money that we're paying for 65 million. If we're going to be penny pinching, we'll go penny pinching all the way. I'd rather take my gamble with Kulu and Lancashire as my two strikers this summer than go and sanction 65 million on Dominic Solanke, Savva. Now look, to caveat that, this could be seen by some fans, you know, look, he scored, 21 goals last season. He's a player coming into his prime. He's 26 years of age. You know, at Bournemouth last season, he played in a lot more of attacking system than maybe in seasons gone by. And, you know, with the more attacking system, the more opportunities he gets in front of goal, the more he's scoring. So you could make the argument that he walks into Postecoglou's team, you know, and starts banging in the goals. Okay, fair enough. You can make that argument. But for me, I still think it's a huge gamble. I'm not sold on him. In fact, Jack mentioned him to me about a few months ago, actually, Dave, would you take Solanke? I shut it down straight away. Jack actually wouldn't mind him. So we're a bit split on our channel on that. But like I said, when it comes to Dominic Solanke, I just don't see it, to be brutally honest with you, Savva.
Yeah. And look, for the viewers at home, look, here are the stats. If anyone hasn't seen, this is Dominic Solanke throughout his entire career. As Dave mentioned there, last season he did have a good year. The worrying thing is, if you're going to pick up a guy that's had one good year in, 9 seasons? I mean, look, the first couple of seasons he's a kid, but if we're looking at 9 seasons as a season pro, 8 seasons, and he's got 1 year of 19. Now, Dave, listen, I agree with you. This is one of those ones where if it pays off, we can all turn around and go, yeah, we were wrong, hold our hands up. For me, I think the difficulty is, first and foremost, when he plays for Bournemouth, no one sticks 10 men behind the ball against Bournemouth and says, break us down. And I watched all of his goals this morning. If you YouTube Dominic Solanke's goals in the Premier League last year, a lot of the goals are where he gets in behind a high line or he's running towards goal with no one really in front of him. And don't get me wrong, he's got a great shot on him. But at Spurs, we know people stick 10 men behind the ball and say, break us down. And that, for me, is where it's different with the quality of striker. Have you got a striker that can, if they're not scoring, can they hold the ball up? Can they run the channels? Can they bring others into play? Can they go and have that fight? I'm not sure. And to your point, Dave, about Brennan Johnson, lots of the talk is about this going to be 60, 65 million, right? Which for me is absolutely crazy money and shows that we have not scouted the market. That would then be, and this brings me on to my next point, Dave, that would then be 65 million hypothetically for Solanke, 60 million for Richarlison, and 50 million for Brennan Johnson. That would mean in the last 3 years, we have spent, if I just quickly do that in my head, that's 60, that's 120, 125. We would have spent 175 million pounds on Brennan Johnson, Richarlison, and Solanke. That no one can tell me there's a plan if that's what we're going for, Dave. That can't be what Levy said when the stadium's going to allow us to compete and will allow us to compete with the top European teams. And then we're making those free signings. Call me negative what you want, but that's poor, right? 175 million.
No, look, I'll share the frustrations. For me, everyone knows my opinion on Harry Kane. I put my neck on the line and said, okay, even if he wants to go, I feel like the club should try everything in their persuasion not to sell this guy because you're going to find it hard to replace him. Any striker that we're linked with now is always going to be a huge step down and always going to be a huge sort of step down in the fans' eyes as well.
Sure.
But it's clear when we sold him, we had no plan. We didn't even have anybody identified to come in and replace him and bring in the goals. We spent that money on James Maddison and Brennan Johnson, hoping that they were going to bring the assist and that some was going to bag more and everyone else was going to bag more. It hasn't happened like that, and now we're going to go and take another gamble to try and solve the problem, which I do not understand whatsoever. My other problem with this deal, though, Savva, is he wasn't at any Euros or any international competition. So we could have signed him. We could have signed him ages ago. And actually, we spoke last week, Sav, about the importance of bringing in forward players and letting them integrate. Because I always say, and look, many people say, scoring goals is the hardest thing to do in football. So you need to get these guys in early to be able to link up with each other, know each other's games, the runs and stuff like that. But yet we're pivoting, bringing this guy in last minute when we could have brought him in ages ago. And I think that's another huge frustration for me. But look,
doesn't that identify, Dave? Doesn't that identify then that when we talk of a plan and a process, and all the people saying, "Oh, we'll wait till the Euros are finished," and Ange comes out last week and says, "Our number one targets are still what we're going after." If that's the case, the only reason can surely be that we're waiting for a Tony or a Neto or Solanke to try and drive the price down, rather than actually say, this is our number one targets, let's get them in early and let's get them integrated. Because, Dave, you and I both know, right? If in the last week of the window, for the best will, and look, you and I disagree on a lot, we agree on a lot, we disagree on a lot, but with the best will in the world, if we sign Neto, like all of the reports now are suggesting it's Neto and Solanke. If we sign them in the last week of the window, the excuse will be, if they don't hit the ground running, will be, but they didn't have a pre-season, but they don't know Ange Ball, but they didn't go on pre-season tour. So both of those players should be relatively easy to do. And when I say relatively easy, if they're your number one target and Bournemouth say 65, 70 million, you pay it. I'm not saying I want him, but if that is their target, pay the money. What? Do you see what I'm saying? I just think the whole thing is mental.
No, 100%. And this is where, your comments about the club's ambition can actually, be brought in. Look, if the club had ambition to really go after a title challenge, which is what Postecoglou says he wants, which is what's coming out of the camp through Madison, Bergvall, people like that.
Yeah.
You go and get this done early. We're not dealing with the likes of Real Madrid where you're talking about 100, 120 million pound signing where, okay, you can understand that takes time with the structures of the payments, add-on fees to get to that number, etc. We're talking about Bournemouth here. If you went down and slapped down 40, 50 million on someone like Solanke, they're going to take that as a no. They're going to take that no-brainer so that they can go and get their transfer targets in. The fact that we actually leave it so late, it puts Bournemouth in a predicament, and they're going to be less reluctant to sell because now they're scrounging around trying to find his replacement, which is going to take this deal even longer to get over the line. So you could be talking last week in a window. But this is where the ambition comes in. If you've got ambition, you put that money down. You get him in here for preseason because you're worried about your own targets. You're worried about what you want to achieve this year, which typical Tottenham Hotspur. We're penny pinching. We're trying to get that deal down. Now, look, I have a question for you. I don't know how you're going to respond to this one. But, Savva, do you think this could actually be one of Paratici's, what would you call, decoy? And what I mean by that is, when we brought in Basuma, all the talk was Tottenham are in for Eriksen. Took everybody off the scent, took clubs off the scent. We got a deal for Basuma, we brought him in. Regardless of how he's worked out, most people at the time said, you know what? Great signing, fair play. We done the same when we brought in Romero. All the links were to Tomiyasu. Brought in Romero without really any concrete links to it before the story really broke. Could this be another situation where we're actually using Solanke to actually try and go and deal with Brentford to try and get the price down a little bit on Tony?
Look, it could be. Absolutely. We have seen that happen before. But then you have to ask the question, if Paratici's driving that, and by the way, I give your theory 100% merit. It could be. But then the worrying thing for me will be, if Paratici's driving that, what does that say for Johan Lang and the fact that he's in charge? What does that say for him? Now, the worrying thing, Dave, a lot of what we're hearing, again, nearly everything football fans talk about is what we're hearing, reports, right? I'm not saying I know anything per se, but a lot of rumours are starting to come out in the last 48, 72 hours that are saying Tony has actually rejected us, that we've tried, he's rejected us. Now, again, finger in the air, I don't know. If he has, it would kind of make sense that we're now pivoting away. My concern is, if you couldn't get Tony, first of all, if Spurs can't get an Ivan Toney from Brentford with 1 year left, then we've got real concerns. Secondly, if Solanke's then the decoy, who? Like, who's it going to be? Because like you said, at some point, some of the signings need to be homegrown. So I can't see another English striker. I don't know, mate.
I seen one today from Football London. Cameron Archer, believe it or not, is, I believe they've also looked at him at some point. So, that could be where we're going next, which is even worse, to be brutally honest with you. Just on that point, I don't think Paratici's driving it. But it is a tactic that Paratici brought to the club. Sure. And I think it's one that, is going to be continued to use, because I don't think it's one Daniel Levy likes, because he doesn't like entering bidding wars. We know that. So throwing people off the scent, so you can work on your negotiations and stuff, I think is a tactic that's going to be employed by from Paratici, but employed by anybody who sits in that seat underneath him from now on. Look, Johan Lang, for me, when we first signed him, Savva, I did mention that I thought he was in here to beef up the homegrown side of the squad. I thought that's one part he done absolutely brilliant at Villa before Munchie came in. It was clear Munchie was brought in to, bolster up the foreign side of the squad. Maybe that's one place where Johan Lang let himself down. But I think he is at Tottenham to operate in this homegrown markets solely. Let's wait and see what he's done. I think he's done a very good job at Aston Villa in terms of boosting their homegrown side, which is actually why they are where they are now, because they've got a proper squad. Let's wait and see what he does for Tottenham Hotspur. I don't think there's a great deal in the market for us to be operating in right now unless we're going to play top dollar. But look, Solanke for me is very underwhelming. We're talking about a window where we were told Tony, Eze, the players that are on international competitions, Tottenham can't go for right now. They're on holidays, etc., etc. Yeah. Of course, that's still there right now as we speak. We're just going off the news that's there. But if it ends up as a Solanke Neto window, don't know about you, but I find that extremely underwhelming considering the two names we were told at the start.
But Dave, I find that an extremely normal Tottenham window. That's the problem. I think the thing is, every summer, I feel like all of us, all football fans are the same, right? We all start the window by going, do you know what? We're going to sign Kvaratskhelia from Napoli. We're going to get Vlahovic or Eze or both. And you watch, Ange's going to completely transform the team with 6 new first-team signings. as the window goes on, you watch all the fans that say things like, I want Lukaku, I want Vlahovic, I want Kvaratskhelia, suddenly go from, no, Solanke's really good. Solanke's an Ange player. And I'll ask you this question, Dave, right? Before we move away from Solanke, if this is what I find funny about Spurs fans, if Villa, Newcastle, Arsenal, Chelsea, United, if any of these had that rumour yesterday or this report that we are going after Dominic Solanke, what would our fans say about that club? If they were after Solanke, we'd laugh, right?
Yeah, we would laugh. We would laugh, to be brutally honest with you. Look, it's one of them. If he comes in, I think, look, as fans, there's nothing more we can do after he comes in. You're going to have to give him the opportunity. Let's see what he can do. But I think the general of this conversation is that we would prefer the club to show more ambition in such an important part, in such an important position in this team. If you want to help the man you got in the dugout and you really want to take this on, we have to bring in a prolific striker, not a guy that has one season behind him of a lot of goals. Look at Harry Kane. Every single season, guaranteed 25 to 30 goals. Even before he hit world-class status, he was at 25 to 30 goals a season. I'd argue strikers in the Premier League are a lot worse than what I was growing up. People think 20 goals is a great season now. That used to be standard when I was growing up. Used to have 6 or 7 strikers that used to hit that 20 mark. I was watching strikers hit 30 odd goals a season in the Premier League. So for me, I think it's hugely underwhelming. I think we need to get back to, bringing in someone a lot more prolific. Of course, anyone coming in right now is a step down for Kane. But there are strikers out there that you can go and bring in that are going to guarantee you goals.
And for me, I think there's at some point we've got to talk about statement. I'm not saying that every signing we make has to be, oh my God, it's a blockbuster deal. But at the moment, I'm not seeing any of the deals where I go, yeah, that shows ambition. Now, look, just to round this off, last night I took the liberty of comparing all of Solanke's stats next to Richarlison's stats in their career. Now, obviously, Solanke's played less games, but on average, again, I can only do it on average. I can't do it game for game because Richarlison's got a better ratio of nearly, by the way, I'm not championing Richarlison, right? But nearly every single stat for a centre forward, Solanke's aren't even as good as Richarlison's. And the problem is we're going off that 1 year last year to look at as an anomaly. This is a guy that scored 29 Premier League goals in 133 games, Dave. That's a 21% strike rate. 21%, right? Now, he's also averaged a goal every 303 minutes. So if I'm not wrong, that's a goal every 3.5 games.
Yeah, 3.5 games, yeah.
Now, that's fine. If you're going to go and get a striker who averages a goal every 3.5 games, right? You're looking at what? 14, 15 goals, 13 goals in the season?
It's not enough.
Fine. Go and pay 20 million for someone and risk it. But if you're telling me there's 65 million on the table and that's the best Spurs can come up with, then I worry. And the last thing I want to show you this. I put this up on my screen a while back and I just want to show you. I don't know if you ever saw this. This is every single wide forward or striker that Tottenham have signed since the signing of Heung-min Son, right? This is every signing, right? Now, people will go, oh, Bale. But you got to remember, that was an injured Gareth Bale on loan that missed like the first couple of months because he wasn't fit. It's a 34-year-old Perisic that we signed. Look at those names, Dave. Right? Now we're talking about adding Solanke to this. This is why I'm not surprised. Like, if it is a smokescreen, great. But it doesn't surprise me because this is the level. This is the level of forwards since Son. And the reason I use Son as the benchmark is he, for me, is the last one we signed that you go, yeah, top player, done it year in, year out. Look at the rest of those names.
But you know what? This one thing that's really frustrated me with Tottenham now in the years. Look, we had Son and Kane. Great partnership together. But in my lifetime growing up, I've always watched players out wide or up front that get me off of my seat, that get me excited to watch Tottenham. I've watched some of the best wingers and striker in world football. Now, in credit to Tottenham, the likes of Aaron Lennon, Gareth Bale, people like that, they identified nice and young, brought them in, developed them and brought them through.
Sure.
We've tried that with the likes of Jack Clark and Kudu, NG and people like that. We just haven't been able to bring them through. Some would argue, was the quality there in the first place? I think Aaron Lennon showed a much more at Leeds and Gareth Bale showed much more at Southampton coming through than what someone like, Jack Clark did at Leeds and stuff like that, for instance.
Yeah.
But so I do think we've gone wrong in that regard. But a lot of it has been underwhelming. Like, a lot of them players I chased out this football club, I didn't give any excuses to, because one thing I have zero tolerance for is a shit forward player, because the importance of them in football, they're going to be the ones to unlock the door. So I do feel we should have a zero tolerance policy to forward players at this football club, considering how important they are. We've seen with Harry Kane, it's the difference between, competing for Champions League and actually going for titles. Okay, we didn't get over the line, but under Pochettino, he was a massive reason why we were in the hunt for titles, because the consistency of the goals that he brought, it meant we could go and win games of football. Bringing in Dominic Solanke, especially if you got Werner and Johnson supplying him, if something happens to Sonny, you're fucked. You're absolutely fucked. You've got a relegation standard front line. Right now, our whole season hinges on Son staying fit. The whole season.
No, absolutely. I think the talent idea.
Yes, we were when we had Harry Kane.
Agreed. I think the talent ID in the forward areas, and when I say strikers and wingers, whatever you want to call them, I think has been appalling at this club for many years. And again, this comes back down to, and I'm not going to go into this now, but this comes back down to, we were told when we moved stadium, it's so we can compete. Yep. And look, again, we talked about Neto last week. I'm a big fan of Neto, the footballer. I'm not a big fan of Neto's injury record. Look, the last thing I wanted to talk to you about, Dave, before we wrap up for a couple of quick minutes is, look, I think, again, we can talk all day long about the forward areas. And everyone that's all we talk about as a fan base right now. Forwards. I get it. Dave, I'm going to make a statement to you, and I want you to, I know you're always going to be honest with me, so I want your honesty here. I came out this week and I've said, I don't care who we buy up front. I don't care if we sign Lionel Messi. I don't care if you sign Ronaldo, R9, Maradona. I don't care, right? If Spurs do not sign a number 6 or a defensive midfielder before the window is out, I don't think it's going to make any difference, because teams, Dave, are going to cut through us at will. So yes, I'm not saying don't go and buy a forward and a wide man, but this for me, the number 6 for me is fundamentally everything to making this system remotely work.
Look, I 100% I understand that argument. You look at Rodri at Man City, a huge part of why they have the dominance they have and they don't get split open the way they do. He's been instrumental in that deep role for Man City, protecting that back line. Look, when Arsenal signed Declan Rice, almost catapulted them into a league title, or a lot closer to it in that league. So it does go to show the importance of a proper number 6 who can sit there and protect your back line. However, Tottenham have a lot of debts to pay off, which I don't think gets spoken enough, which I think is why we're seeing the approach we've seen to this window, where we're selling first, offloading a lot of the wages, trying to recoup some transfer fees, which we've done a shit job for. May as well just ripped up their contract seasons ago at this point. And that's why we're floundering around in the market right now, because I believe that we've got debts to pay. We have to make these repayments. Got a 30-year mortgage on the stadium. And that's why I think Daniel Levy's waiting for that investment that we were told, that he's open to, for them to go and purchase the big stars. But again, that's just a theory. There's no guarantee that money's going to go into transfers. That could be, if I'm a businessman, I'm investing into that hotel, not the playing squad. So,
don't worry.
They always say put your money in bricks and mortar, don't they? So, for me, I'm not sure that would go to the transfer signings. But look, when it comes to what were we talking about again? I've lost my way, Savva. What was the question?
It was about the number 6, because
the number 6.
Listen, so for me, Dave, every game I'm watching, and again, we could talk about Van der Ven and Romero when they're back. Van der Ven and Romero aren't supermen, right? If they've got 3 or 4 players on transition against them, there's only so much they can do. And we're seeing this. Every goal we can see, Dave, seems to be a carbon copy of the goal before. And if we do not get, it doesn't have to be an out-and-out 6, but it needs to be someone that is defensive minded, that sits there and says, you know what, when we attack, I will drop in and make this a back three. And at the moment, mate, I don't think without that, we can go and score 100 goals this season. We're still going to concede 60.
Look, don't get me wrong. I think bringing in a striker will improve us. And I do think, Ange could make tactical adaptations to, if we don't bring in a number 6, to shore that up a bit more. So I do think it'll bring us forward. But if you really want to go and really compete, yeah, you bring in a number 6, 100%. Ideally, he shuts it up. But I don't 100% agree with you, because I do think there is tactical changes that Ange can make that would shore that up if we were to.
But he doesn't, right? But this is the thing, Dave. He doesn't.
This he probably won't. We've seen on preseason he hasn't, altered any of his fullbacks whatsoever. But I'll be brutally honest, I don't think Tottenham are going for number 6. I haven't seen any massive links to any real number 6s this summer. But also, once we signed Gray, I think that put an end to it, personally.
Dave, I completely agree with you. I don't think we're after one. I just think that if you look at this squad, yes, we need a forward, but I think we are absolutely crying out for it. And I think it's a lot of pressure to put on Gray. It's so much pressure that...
Yeah, it is.
Listen, you look at all the top teams throughout the years, the players they've had in that position. When you look at Leicester winning the title with Kante, like Chelsea with the likes of Makalele, Essien, United with the likes of Carrick, Keane... you look at Liverpool with the likes of Wijnaldum and Fabinho. Man City, Fernandinho, Rodri. I think Arsenal now, Rice. They're now getting Mika Marino to sit in there with Rice. I think you've got to have some defensive solidity in midfield. And at the moment, I just feel like we've got a million number 8s that all do the same thing, and we're trying to pigeonhole them. But look, Dave. We'll have another chat next week. Yep. By this time, maybe we'll have signed someone. We'll have played Bayern Munich, and we'll see what happens. But listen, Dave, everyone can find Dave. You know where to find him. Irish Hotspur, the Irish Hotspur. Please, his link is in the bio of this video. Dave, thanks very much. Appreciate your time as always, mate.
No, thank you very much for having me, guys. Make sure you smash the like for Savva. If you are new, keep smashing the subscribe button. And guys, give him a break. Stop getting on his case.
That's never going to happen. But thanks, Dave. Listen, take care, everyone. And as always, come on, you first.